Hi there, Ronnie here, coming at you with a video, a sequel of sorts, I guess, to my previous one. Um, One of my sort of frequent commenters, a guy by the name of Rob Necronomicon, love that name, asked me a question in the comments of the last video. And I thought it was an interesting question, and rather than just reply to it on the thread, I thought I'd make a video and sort of explain. So he asked the question, what do I think of um, the whole business of paying to play and professional GMs? For those living under a rock, uh, there are, and this is a phenomenon more in America than Britain, to be honest, for reasons I'll cover. But clear the voice a bit. Um, there are people who actually hire themselves out as professional GMs, where you pay for them to come to, assume your local gaming store, um, or maybe they have a space, and you pay them to run a game, and they come up with everything. They do all the work, and uh, I think it's not as well known a model over here, and that is simply, I believe, down to population. Um, I don't think it's a viable business model here. Whether I think it should be a business model at all, I'll get to in a second. But it's certainly, I don't think it's a viable business model in the UK. um, what do I think of the idea of a professional GM? I am conflicted. I will be fair. There is a part of me that would love to make money out of this business. In the sense that if I thought there was enough of a market in the area for a professional GM, and I thought I could actually make a viable business out of it, I would consider it. Um, I think the best kind of job you can ever have is the kind of job where you're paid to do something you would easily do for free because you love what you do. Um, Personally, I think, however, for myself, I don't think I would last very long because I think I would suffer from burnout. And I certainly don't think I would be able to use it. And because of that, I don't think I'd be able to use it as a primary source of income. I think it'd be something running something maybe twice a week, sort of 3-4 hours a pop. Uh, you know, I get why people do it, and certainly, as I say, in the USA, just simply because of population, there are more people, just in terms of absolute bodies, there are more people that play role-playing games in a larger population country like America than they do here. So I think it's a more viable business model. But the reason I'm conflicted is because there is a part of me that finds the whole concept of paying someone to run a game to be sort of morally repugnant. And I certainly wouldn't charge my friends for me running a game. I think that'd be an utter. Oh my god! I personally think that my friends would tell me to go do one, and I think they would be entirely right to do so. Um, Pay to play, essentially, where people who are coming to the table are pay you so that they can sit and play. Which kind of sounds like you're being paid to be a professional GM. It's just an end round, I guess. I can see, I can see the attraction for certain places, certain venues. Certainly, there are certain. So I'm doing a lot of certains. There are some conventions, not all, some conventions where you pay essentially to book a seat for a game. UK Games Expo being an example, where you pay when you if you want to play a particular game, you pay. I think it was £4 a year. I was down uh, to book a seat. Now that's not going to the GM. That's going to the people sort of running the convention because let's be honest, they've got whole hire out fees and all kinds of stuff, overheads that they have to manage, and they got to get the money back somehow. Um, so yeah, I understand that certain local game stores, again, not all, certain local game stores, if you're playing, then everyone pays to have a seat at the table. Again, that's not paying the GM. That's paying for the use of the table. Other friendly local gaming stores, Settlers in Hamilton, do this, which is a case of it's free to play. It's free to sit at the table and play. The only thing Settlers ask is that you buy something. So it's not 100% free, but buy something. Buy a can of juice, get a toasty, buy some dice. Just buy something. Just don't sit there and freeload. Um, but an individual, a GM, charging you to come sit at their table, no, no. And the reason I say that is because when you do that, there is a certain assumption. When you do that, there's a certain assumption of technical ability, prowess, um, expertise that you believe you're paying for. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. Um, I've been running games for 30 odd years now. Would I call myself an expert? No. Experienced? Yes. Would I go so far as to say that I think I'm quite good at what I do, at the style of game I run? I would say yes. Um, I think I'm very good at what I do. Um, but what I do isn't necessarily what people are looking for from a GM. Um, and I think there is a case where if you are paying to sit at someone's table, or if you're paying the GM to run a game, there may be an aspect to that old adage of he who pays the piper calls the tune, where the players are then dictating to the GM the style of game. And I can understand that. If a bunch of players are paying for a GM, uh, and the GM comes and the GM runs their kind of games, there's been no discussion prior. And the GM runs one kind of game and the players were hoping for another, then the players are going to feel shortchanged. Whereas I think, maybe a conversation should have before any money is passed. What kind of games do you run? Could you run this kind of game? Yes, I can. Well, we would like you to run that kind of game. And if the GM says, yeah, I can do that, then fine. Um, but from a strictly sort of moral, ethical gamer point of view, if such a thing exists, I'm not a big fan of the idea of pay to play. I'm not a big fan of professional GMs because I think there might, and this links back to the previous video about creating tiers and sort of assumed giving certain people an unexpected gravitas which they haven't earned. I think a person who puts themselves out there and says, I am a professional GM, therefore I am so much better than those amateur GMs. Where truth is, really the only difference between someone like myself and a myriad of other people that I know that run games and so-called professional GMs is arrogance. Would I go so far as to say arrogance? There has to be some sort of self-belief that goes beyond modesty. Um, but I'm never a big fan of it. I'm never a big fan of the idea of someone. I mean, I could imagine going into Settlers and someone sort of hiring themselves out as a professional GM for Settlers. Um, and the problem would be they might be very good, great. They might be average, might be terrible. And that description might depend on the players you get and their expectations. But regardless, because that person has placed themselves as a professional GM, they are in some way stating that they are somewhat above the people merely doing it for fun, for the hobby. The problem then becomes that all the other GMs who work, have to say, will have worked just as hard to make a good experience and an interesting story. We're going to be seen as lesser than. And if the GM is professional GM is seen as really bad, it might put players off, new players from ever trying again because they might think, well, if he's the best of them, I say he or she, they. Let's not hooked up on genders. You know, if that's the best, then maybe it's no for me. And I can see that being the case. Um, I really can. I can see people. I could actually see people not uh, getting involved in a game if they have a really bad experience with a professional GM. There is a part of me, as I said at the start, I would love to make money out of being a GM. But I think the main thing is I would burn out, which is why I couldn't do it as a primary. Um, because I put my all in. I can't because I don't use published scenarios either. I might crib a map or two, but I'm not going to use published scenario. And I would burn out. And I think burnout is inevitable because of the nature of the hobby. Um, and because of that, I think inevitably you might find people who are professional GMs not lasting very long because they get burnout. Or they end up undoing a good reputation because they start to get frazzled. Or they're just going through the motions and they're not really committing because they can feel that they're on the edge of just going, oh, for God's sake, I'm having enough of this. Um, so, yeah, I have problems with both ideas. I have problems with the idea of a professional GM. I have problems with the idea of pay to play. Um, it's slightly different with video games or even card games, where people do try and pay for an advantage. You can pay in a lot of video games. You can pay extra, for DLC that will get you better armor, better weapons, higher levels. With collectible card games, you can you know, pay to get more cards. Um, and that allows you to construct the very best deck, so you can pay to win. Um, which is why I don't like those style of games. Uh, but with a role playing game, I don't think you couldn't really. I mean, you shouldn't really. I suppose you could use the same model, and some guy, you know, walks in with 20 quid, hands it to the GM, and suddenly they've got a level 15 character with weapons and armor that make your eye, break your heart and make your eyes bleed. Um, that wouldn't fly with me at all. Um, but I think it's problematic. I don't think it's going away anytime soon. And I think the more successful and mainstream the hobby gets, I think the more likely it's going to stay and possibly even become a staple. The only way to really combat it in terms of your friendly local gaming store, or even if you're playing in games online, is simply if the person is advertising it as pay to play, don't just don't. Don't assume that because a game has to be paid to get in that it's going to be any better than you and your pals can concoct on a Saturday night. Um, just it just it's worrying as a trend. I think the biggest problem is it's going to make it could create a tier system where other GMs are sort of nudged out of the way or assumed to be lesser than because they're not professional GMs. Aye, right. Um, and I think, I mean, I'm somewhat of a hypocrite in myself, is because I'm saying, yeah, I'd love to make money from it, but I know for a fact I would never pay. I would never hire a professional GM, and I would never pay to play at a friendly local gaming store where I have to pay to sit in on a table. No, if you're all if you're all part of one group and you're all paying the same, including the GM, and you're all having to pay to sit at the table because it's a shop, that's fine. If you're having to pay because it's a convention, that's understandable. Um, but if a GM is running a game and basically says, yes, to play in my game, you need to pay me. You need to pay such an amount to sit at my table. They can go get themselves carted. Now, I say that fully accepting the fact that if I were to suddenly hire myself out as a professional GM, there's a lot of people who would say, you can get yourself carted and all because you would never pay other people. I have to accept that. Um, but yeah, so those are my thoughts. I've waffled on for a wee while now. Uh, I hope that answers your question, Rob. Um, and thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon with another video.